Unless you're one of the rare people who have never played a Grand Theft Auto game, I'm sure you've heard of the Grand Theft Auto franchise. It's one of, if not the most popular game franchise in existence. With GTA Vice City being regarded as one of the best games in the series, I think people completely sleep on Vice City Stories, which released back in 2006 for the PSP and then was ported to the PS2 in 2007. As someone who grew up with the GTAs releasing yearly, the only time I was able to play this was back when I rented a copy of the PS2 version from Blockbuster, and that just shows how old I am. But that was so many years ago that I didn't remember much about the game at all. So assuming GTA 6 does release this year, I decided to replay through the 3D games in story order to experience this series in a different way. And after waiting over 15 years to replay this, I'm definitely glad I did.
I deserve to die. It should have been me instead of Zach on Hill 491, man. I'm coming home, Daddy! Yeah, Daddy, I'm coming home!
You're pathetic.
What's interesting about Vice City Stories is that it doesn't really do much different than the other GTA games. Of course, you could say that about a lot of the games in this series, but this one definitely falls into that category. As you would expect, you have access to the different islands around Vice City with the ability to free roam and do whatever you want. However, here's where you'll notice that this is definitely a PSP game. Considering that this game came out after San Andreas, you might expect there to be a lot of things to do, but there really isn't. Yes, there's activities and side missions, but that's not what I'm talking about. When you don't want to do the main missions, there isn't anything to do in the actual city. Unless you can and I completely missed it, you can't go to the club and hang out there or do anything that isn't predetermined in the game. Let me explain further. There's stores in the game that you can enter that sell various goods or services that may catch your eye. In the original Vice City, you could enter these places, draw your weapon at the guy at the register, and the money would stack up on the counter, letting you rob the store. In Vice City Stories, this is not the case. You can aim your gun at the employee, but nothing happens. Even if you kill him, it's not guaranteed that he'll drop any cash. Another example is that you can't go into clothing shops and buy clothes. You just receive outfits for completing various missions as you progress the game. With San Andreas, you were able to go into clothing stores and customize CJ however you wanted. So not being able to do the same thing with Vic was a shame. These were just two examples, but mechanics like these being altered makes this game feel smaller, reminding you that at its core, it's still a handheld title. However, just because certain aspects of the game were fleshed out like previous entries, this doesn't mean that there wasn't any additional content at all. Outside of the main missions, there was plenty to do. One of the new features was this Empire system. In San Andreas, you had the gangs that you could fight and kill, which would then give you their territory. Rockstar took this feature and applied it to Vice City Stories by having us do the same thing, but making them businesses. Without going too in depth into it, spread out over the entirety of Vice City, there's businesses that you can acquire by killing whoever currently owns it, and then changing the business type to one of your choosing. These can be drugs, prostitution, loan shark, etc. Regardless of what you choose, your building will then go under construction, and once built, you can start doing side missions for the business. Now, what I liked about this was that the side missions were the ones that you could do in past games, but they were actually integrated into these business ventures. Like if you do the drugs business, you could go inside buildings and kill the dealers inside while smashing up the drugs as well. This is no different than in San Andreas when you would go inside houses and do the same thing during some missions. Take this concept and apply it to the other business types, and these side missions were really fun. I liked how completing these, you not only got the business which generated revenue for you, but it also gave you a rank for whatever business it was. So if you were doing drugs or prostitution or something, the more missions you completed, the higher your rank would be. Nothing too crazy, but a nice way of making the player care more about their rank than they probably did in the past. Outside of these business missions, there was the usual rampages, vehicle missions, and collectibles. I'd be lying if I said I did a lot of these because there was no real incentive to do them unless you're going for 100%. And I definitely wasn't. But even still, there is a good amount of content to do when you want to take a break from going through the main missions, which for a PSP game I wasn't expecting. Speaking of the story missions, I thought these were hit or miss. Sometimes the missions would be grand and over the top, and other times they were so simple and bare bones I couldn't believe they were in the game. This is especially apparent early on in the game where the missions are ridiculously simple, but since it's the beginning I kind of expected it. However, later on there's times where a mission can be done in literal seconds because of how short it is. I know that not every mission can be the greatest thing ever, but there was too many times where I found myself like, damn, that was it? Even with the inconsistencies regarding these missions, there was plenty of them that hit. Some of the stuff that happens in these missions gets real crazy, especially once Lance Vance comes into the picture. Yes, you heard that right. Lance Vance is in the game, but I'll get to that later when I talk about the story. There was definitely times that had me like, yo, but those were dropped in between a lot of filler or easy missions. It's hard to describe, but completing the main objectives for this game felt too samey. So many times I was like, oh, we're doing this again, but it was for a different mission. I don't want to say that Rockstar was lazy when developing these missions, but with the variation of excitement between them being so up and down, it's hard not to think that, honestly. Even considering everything that I said, I was still satisfied by the time I rolled credits. It's just that going through some of this along the way had me questioning how much effort was really put into this game. Thankfully, a lot of the core mechanics from the past titles were still present in this game to make actually completing these missions easier. The most important one, the cheat codes. I don't know about you, but there's absolutely no way I'm ever playing any of these old Grand Theft Auto games without cheat codes. These make the games way more fun, especially with how games are today where cheat codes are pretty much non-existent. Using them was a necessity during my playthrough. Unfortunately, just like the other stuff I mentioned, even the cheats were a bit lacking. But that was okay. The most important thing was that I had the armor, weapons, and health cheats, which saved me plenty of times. Using these during the missions made some of the outdated gameplay mechanics a bit easier to deal with. There were times where I would use a fire truck to spray water and it wouldn't work, or get blown up by something that wasn't caused by me, along with some other things. Now if you want to play this game without cheats, that's definitely an option, although I don't recommend it. There's missions in this game that are so much easier with them, especially considering that you have times where you have to defend someone or something. As I was going through this game, one thing was apparent, the lack of cars. This could be because I emulated the PS2 version, but for some reason, there wasn't as many cars as there should have been. Literally after completing every mission, there was no cars on the street, and if I did come across one, it was after I had to run a couple miles to get to it. Now my memory isn't the best, but I do remember there being plenty of cars in the older titles, so I'm unsure why there wasn't a lot in this one. It could have been a design choice, but for some reason, I just didn't have a lot during my playthrough. Weird stuff. If there was one notable mechanic that was taken from San Andreas, that would be the targeting system. Locking on the targets felt just like that game and made it extremely easy to shoot and kill any enemy in your sight. It's all really seamless, as all you had to do was press a button to aim and then another to shoot. Yes, the controls are outdated, but if you played the older GTA games before, then this is nothing new for you. Regardless, the shooting was so much better than the original Vice City, and I think it's mainly because of this mechanic. Now what would a GTA game be without the music, especially in Vice City? The soundtrack for this game wasn't quite on par with Vice City, but it was close. I think the amount of music that was put in this game was plenty to keep you locked in and immersed. With it taking place in 1984, there was only so much iconic 80s music that had released to this point compared to 86, where there was a lot more. So as you get further into the game, you'll find yourself listening to the same tracks over and over and over. Thankfully, the music is so good that it's not a big deal, but sometimes I was like, damn, didn't I just hear this song on the last mission? On the flip side, it could be because of budget, as getting these songs into the game does cost a lot of money, so maybe there were some decisions made. But regardless, these radio stations help to add so much more to the overall atmosphere that is Vice City. Just like the original game, the music is an absolute treat and a must-have to be playing at all times during the gameplay. The gameplay for Vice City Stories doesn't move the needle, but it does everything it needs to do. It maintains the GTA formula, and if you played any of the games that released before this, then you'll know exactly what to expect. The story missions are a bit lazy at times, but for the most part, you'll enjoy going through each of them to see how Vic's story pans out. The side activities incorporate more of the older stuff while still keeping things fresh, making them worth doing, at least for a while. The gameplay for this game is solid and impressive, especially for a PSP game.
Hey, bro!
Lance,
Hey!
what are you doing here?
You don't sound so pleased.
I'm not so pleased.
Thanks, bro. Who was you expecting? What a greeting, man.
Not you. Someone useful.
The plot for Vice City Stories is what intrigued me the most about this game. Just going off the name for this title, you knew where this game was taking place, but not much else. Right off the bat, you're introduced to Vic Vance, brother of Lance Vance from Vice City, who is trying to raise money for medicine for his other brother Pete. The whole brother thing is a little confusing at first, but it gets cleared up eventually. As you try to accomplish this goal, you're screwed over by your commanding officer and are kicked out of the military. Here's where Vic's story actually begins and his journey in the drug game takes off. Over the course of this story, you meet various faces, some new, and a chunk of them are old, with them showing up from Vice City. I think this is one of the best features about this game. Having played Vice City already, it was so cool to see returning characters from that game look different and be in a separate place in their lives since this takes place 2 years prior. For example, seeing Umberto Robina and working with him brought a smile to my face because he's a memorable character from the original game, but seeing the situation he's in this made his entire presence feel completely different than before. And this is the same for all the returning characters. Even though this is Vic's first time meeting them, for the player, reuniting with them just made the whole world feel that much more connected and real. This was a big reason why I chose to replay this series in story order, just so I could experience these characters and the growth or changes they go through as time literally passes by. It's not easy to put into words, but it's nice to view the story and universe of this series from this lens instead of the normal release order lens, if that makes any sense. In my opinion, Vic is a cool guy, but he's just kinda boring and bland. And on top of that, he's not the brightest, but he thinks he is. Avoiding spoilers, but over the course of the story, he gets screwed over by the same people multiple times, but somehow keeps falling for the same tricks over and over. He knows that he's in deep shit, yet he keeps doing the same thing. Then when Lance comes in the picture, he just makes everything worse, getting the duo into even more trouble. But what does Vic do? He blames everything on Lance, which is justified a lot of the time, but sometimes he just needed to own his own shit and face that he messed up. I think that the dynamic between Vic and Lance was really good though. The banter between them, as Vic is seen as the smart and cautious one, while Lance is more unpredictable and reckless, made each scene with them more dynamic and fresh. Seeing what they go through followed by how they resolve their problems gave a sense of uncertainty that I wasn't expecting. What cannot be understated regarding this story is the impact that Vic's decision making has on this game. As I already mentioned, he thinks that he's making all the right calls, but in reality, he isn't. He gets involved with the wrong people, hooks up with a trailer trash druggie with a kid, and gets screwed over by his enemies multiple times. There was times where I deadass thought, Vic really can't be this stupid, right? Because he just kept getting into situation after situation. It was insane. Nonetheless, him and Lance always found some way out of it. By the time I rolled credits on this story, I was satisfied, but I couldn't help but think there was a missed opportunity here. I think that Rockstar should have switched who we play as. It would have made so much more sense to play as Lance instead of Vic. I'm not saying that Vic couldn't be in the game, but it would have been perfect if we played as Lance and got into trouble and had to call in our big brother Vic in order to help us get out of it. There was no Tommy Vercetti or any other friends he had, and considering the type of person Lance is, this lines up perfectly. Imagine having an entire game in Vice City, but you play as Lance Vance. That would be so much better than what we ended up getting. Even with what happens to him in Vice City, knowing what he was doing before he meets Tommy and gets into that entire situation would have been so cool. I'm still good with what we got, but I think the story could have been a 10 out of 10 if we played as him, but since we played as boring Vic, it was just okay. Honestly, the story for Vice City Stories was good, but it could have been better. The support characters helped keep things exciting, but if it wasn't for Lance, Vic would have gotten even more boring than he already is. There's plenty of twists and turns, but if you pay attention, you should be able to tell where the story will ultimately head. For a handheld title to have this level of storytelling though is absolutely insane, and you can't help but to be impressed, which I certainly was. Overall, GTA Vice City Stories is a solid game that many have overlooked. With it releasing on the PSP, I'm sure that a lot of fans never got the chance to play this or missed it when it was ported to the PS2. Revisiting this so many years later showed me that while the main missions are a bit varied in quality, the side content helps pad out the game to make this title worth playing. I think if Vic was more interesting, then I would have latched onto his character more, but instead I ended up wanting to know what Lance was up to instead. For those reasons, I'm going to give this game an 8. For a PSP game, this title was good. I can only imagine playing this when this released on your handheld, and completing missions while you're in the car or on the bus. It was probably really fun. I think that if this was a bit more fleshed out, then this game could have rivaled Vice City, but once you get your hands on this game, it's very apparent that it was designed to be smaller in scope and scale, even if you're playing in the same place. The differences in 2 years are seen throughout the story and missions and allow this game to breathe on its own, while not being completely overshadowed by the original Vice City. Once again, Rockstar did a solid job at giving us another reason to jump into Vice City, even if it was with a different character. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, they even gave us a random Phil Collins concert for the hell of it too. What did you think about Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories? Have you played this, or are you hearing about this for the first time? Let me know in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to watch one of my other reviews right here.